get seated. Sit seated.
You have to be
This
focused.
thing will take 2 hours.
Yep.
Well, we've
Then
done
we-
it.
then we have to
California
download.
right now.
Okay.
So mother and father are in
How
California,
are we doing, son?
Yep.
and
It's only 50 minutes so far.
they get a call for help from mother's mother.
It's about 1938 or something.
No,
like
34.
No, even
Like
like 1930.
And
19 was I didn't even know Hitler was around back then.
Daddy died.
Daddy died,
Yeah.
and they went.
Phyllis's father died.
Phyllis's
Yeah.
father died swimming in the Pacific Ocean in his 90s.
Sorry to hear
So
that.
they went
It was a
to
tough old bastard.
they
If it hadn't been
went
for the
to
crash, you'd probably still be alive.
they went to Ohio, and I guess it was Cincinnati or Cleveland. Which
Mom was Cincinnati.
which is the one on
Pop
the
was
river?
Cleveland.
Which is the one on the big river?
That's Cincinnati.
Cincinnati.
That's where they
Yeah,
went to.
that was a huge port.
And
Across from Kentucky.
there was still some property that belonged to mother's family, and
Daddy hadn't lost it in the Depression.
mother's mother was trying to run it, and Nick showed up with Phyllis to help run it, and one of the things they made were mats for
Bumpers.
doormats.
Oh, really? Like a
And-
factory then, you're saying?
Yes, it was a factory, and the doormat in Seacount was one that they had made,
Oh, really?
and it was made out of old tires. And
Yeah. Cut into strips with wire
Wires.
interlacing
interlacing.
to hold it
Well,
together.
anyway, they had a factory helper there whose name was Carl, and
We liked Carl.
He was a painter.
he was a painter. Well, he was a roustabout in this factory,
He wasn't.
and he was a nice young man, and they took him into their house.
During the Depression.
And mother's mother basically said that you can't have a bachelor living in this house with a spinster lady, who is her daughter.
Elizabeth.
So basically, they got married.
Oh,
Seemed to work
oh,
out all
right,
right.
Carl,
seemed
of
to work
course.
out.
So the neighbors wouldn't talk.
Well, Nick couldn't stand mother's mother, Hortense. So they came east, and they came to Providence, Rhode Island.
Because Jeannie found Papa a job.
Yes. So his mother found our father a job working at Mason Can Company. And they rented a little teeny house in Riverside, Rhode Island.
Just down from where
Peter lives.
you're living now.
And I was born.
Wow.
Shortly after that, Gaga decided that is no fit place for a grandson of mine to live, and she built the house on the reservoir, which were two large, in Rumford, Rhode Island,
Roughly interconnected.
which were two large multi-story homes that were prefab, and Gaga had the back house, we had the front house with a garage here on Newman Avenue.
That they were only prefabbed in that the sides of the house were all brought in sections. They actually built a frame.
Right.
Yeah, they
Someone
didn't
would build a
have,
house. No, it wasn't prefab the way we think of it.
No.
they didn't have plywood then,
Wasn't.
so big sheets of siding was something
Asbestos.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
It
new. Well,
wasn't.
that house I had in South Windsor had asbestos, but it was in the form of shingles. Yeah.
And Gaga is the same person as Hortense. Phyllis.
No, Gaga
Oh,
is Nick's mother.
Oh, excuse me. All right.
Okay? So that's where we lived and where Billy and Peter were born.
Yep.
And in the 1938 hurricane,
They had a summer
Nick had
place.
taken a summer house
At Wash Hill.
at Watch Hill when the hurricane came through,
Yeah.
and we had a nurse in those days, and the nurse was charged with taking me up the hill, and mother took baby Peter, who
Yep.
was just born,
And
and
little
Billy
Billy.
under her arm, and
Yeah,
she trotted up the hill.
She stuffed my head into the sleeve of my thing.
And we got separated, and the nurse and I were lost for a couple of days.
Really?
Yep, and we were
Wow.
listed on the
You were at the
post
firehouse.
office No, we were listed on the post office list of people who died in the hurricane.
Oh my God.
Baby, Montserrat, and nurse. But we were
Been
picked up
frantic.
by a couple who were driving it by in a car. I actually remember this.
Oh wow.
And
He was,
I was 4 years old.
He had to be
no, you were older than that, 38 to 36?
4. 34.
30, I'm 36, you're 30.
Well,
You're already
anyway.
4 or 5 years old.
He's just 4 years older than I am, so if I was
Yes,
just
but he
born,
was-
he had to
he
be
was
4 years
five.
older.
So we were kept by this family and then finally returned to our parents.
Wow.
So that gets us up to the Second World War with our parents. Now we ought to talk about Nick's sister,
Okay, Emily.
Emily, Aunt Emily.
Meanwhile, before the war, Emily
Yes, that's-
marries a Swiss fellow.
Well, we even ought to talk about Gaga's apartment.
Oh,
Emily
okay.
and Louis.
No.
Yeah, no.
Just Emily, we're
Just
gonna
Emily.
do just
Now
Emily.
Gaga, Gaga had this apartment in France.
See, Gaga is father's mother. She had 3 children. We've been talking about Pop. We killed Luther off, and now we're on to Emily.
Okay.
Now we're on to Emily.
Mm-hmm.
And Aunt Emily is very artistic.
Oh, yeah.
And Gaga had breast cancer. And she is told she's going to die.
I
There's
never knew
nothing,
that.
there's
Yeah.
nothing that can be done for you. A friend of hers says, hey, you know, there's this new religion. It's called Christian Scientists. Why don't you become a Christian Scientist? And she did. She was an Episcopalian until then. She became a Christian Scientist, and the cancer disappeared. So, hey, she's a believer.
You bet she's
It works.
a believer. Yeah.
So, here's a wealthy, single woman with an exotic daughter, and she's quite exotic herself, who is living in Paris and has lots of money.
Emily being the exotic daughter.
Yes. And she has a salon, a typical Paris
Oh,
salon.
really?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And one day a week,
Boy, was I sheltered.
she had open house. And people like Hemingway and people like that would come to her salon.
The lady that danced naked in California,
Yes, Isadora Duncan.
Duncan. She was
Now,
a
it's
rage.
a
in
family
Paris.
story that is sometimes disputed. That Isadora Duncan died in Aunt Emily's Bugatti. That was another Bugatti.
Her long
Yeah, she-
scarf wrapped around a tire. And,
She did die in a Bugatti.
Yep.
Yeah.
well, I'm not sure.
Oh, I read that in a. I
But
read a
anyway,
biography.
Aunt Emily has a lover, a swan, and something gets confused because the next thing you know, Gaga has married this man.
Yeah.
So Aunt Emily's boyfriend marries the mother.
Emily's mother.
Yes.
That's
yes.
gonna be awkward.
That's
Yes.
Curry, who was...
And the happy couple is going to go off touring in a car. And they ask our father, would he like to drive them? Well, Nick doesn't particularly feel like driving the happy couple, so he invites a friend to come with him. So these 2 boys are driving the happy couple, and they're in
His-
Turkey.
His mother
And
and Emily's boyfriend.
who have
Yeah,
just married.
Curry.
Now, it's pretty boring for the kids, so they invent a game. And the game gives points for what you hit.
Are you sure we
With
should
the
talk
car.
about...
Sure. And the most points you can get is if you hit a pig. So one of them is driving and they hit the pig and the car doesn't survive the accident.
Oh my God.
The rear axle breaks.
So there are 2 kids driving the car,
Yeah.
and there's Gaga and her
New husband
new husband
In the
back
in the
seat,
back seat,
not responsible for the game per se.
per se.
It happened in Yugoslavia
That's right, Yugoslavia.
on their way to Constantinople.
So, Gaga sends off a telegram to Rolls-Royce saying that, well, we've had an accident and the back axle is broken, please supply us with one.
It was a Rolls Royce.
Yes. So a Rolls-Royce charters an airplane and they fly a representative, a suit,
With
and
that,
a mechanic and an axle. And they replace the axle.
in a little town in
and
You
Yugoslavia.
gotta realize this was possible.
The town used to have a pig.
So we don't know much more about that trip, but when they got back Gaga had no bill for the job, and she had her secretary send a letter to Rolls-Royce saying, "Thank you very much, you were very nice, but no bill." And somewhere in Nick's papers, there was a letter that Rolls-Royce had sent back saying, "Thank you for your kind words, but you do realize that Rolls-Royce back axles do not break."
Oh.
This one story that I liked from that time was that Grandma sent Emily and Pop down to Loire to pick up her luggage from the steamer.
Yes.
And when they took it through customs, they discovered that she had packed one half of a steamer trunk, which is, this big, with toilet paper. And the French customs officials knew there was something going on. Anybody would bring half a trunk of toilet paper. They actually unwound one of the rolls.
Yes.
I remember that. They said that French toilet paper was like a corn husk.
That's right.
Well,
If
when
you
I
were
was
lucky.
when I was in graduate school in England, English toilet paper was like wiping your bottom with waxed paper.
Yeah.
It was
Oh,
just
yeah.
awful. It was
Like
awful.
you were in deep trouble in the outhouse.
Yes.
All that was left was the cover of Life magazine.
That's exactly right. Anyway,
So-
meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Back at the ranch, Nick has a friend. I guess Nick is now at the University of Zurich, and
They're in Riverside, Rhode Island with
No,
kids.
we're going back in
on a
time.
flashback.
Oh, okay.
We're on a
Okay.
flashback. We're catching up on Emily.
We should use
We're
years.
catching up
So
on
this
Emily.
is 1935 or something?
Oh no, 1930.
Okay.
In fact, there's a picture of Nick on the St. Moritz bobsled run. At the head of he's the driver of the bobsled.
He's the first one to die.
He's
of
the first one to
83.
die. And the story goes that they were coming down, and some girl had gotten on the bobsled run halfway down in a luge, and they were going to run over the girl, and Nick chose to go off the bobsled run, and a couple of arms were broken.
Wow. I
Yeah.
guess he saved your life though.
Yes,
Probably.
If it was true.
Probably. Anyway, he had a friend.
he
who
had a
was-
friend who was Jimmy Zai,
Yep.
and Jimmy had appalling breath,
Or teeth.
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 And he fancied Emily. So Nick sent a letter.
Excuse me. You want to get interrupted because Timmy's coming.
You probably want to turn it off.
Hey!